right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Laura Ries, who is in Atlanta, Georgia. How you doing, Laura?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and Laura is a renowned marketing strategist, best-selling author, speaker, and television personality. She serves as chairwoman president of Ries, a global positioning strategy and consulting firm she co-founded with her late father, Al, the legendary pioneer of brand positioning. Laura is known for insights on visual branding, competitive strategy, and rallying consumers through focused positioning. And obviously, as we said, you frequently appear in the media. What we wanted to talk today about is your book, The Strategic Enemy, Laura, which was released exactly when?
It comes out next week.
That's
So
what I
it
thought.
is September 16th. Super excited.
Excellent, excellent. So by the time this goes live, it'll be out a couple of weeks. So there you
Yeah,
go. The hype will be there. So excellent, excellent. Okay, so let's start off by for those not familiar with your journey, can you share a little bit about your journey as a positioning strategist and the work you did with your father and how you evolved from the previous books to this one?
sure. I mean, that's a big question, but
Mhm,
happy to take it on. I grew up with positioning. It came out. It was a concept developed with my father, his previous partner, Jack Trout, in the early 70s. And it really kind of changed how we thought about communication. It wasn't just communicating out. What
mhm,
the key idea to understand was that the goal was owning a position in the mind of the consumer and to structure that message so that it would be instantly and easily accepted by the mind was the real challenge as well as the real opportunity. So from a young age, I learned about positioning from my dad at the dinner table, fell in love with the concept. And after college, I worked for a whole year at an advertising agency in New York City. And then, my dream was to work with my father. And so I did that, and I like to say I was the ultimate apprentice, right?
mhm.
As a young kid there, learning from the master, and I absolutely did. It was such a joy to do that, and we were together almost 30 years. He passed
Wow.
in 2022 at almost 96, and
Uh,
working till the very, very end. He loved what he did, had so much passion, and really had a gift not just of doing the work, but in sharing the experiences and teaching other people. And that's really where the books came about, is giving others the opportunity to understand and
mhm,
do and build their brand. So we wrote several books together, like the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding, which is
mhm,
still very popular, the Bible of branding, many say.
mhm,
The Fall of Advertising and the Rise of PR. But all of these books are really building on the fundamental positioning idea.
mhm.
And I like to say there are different tools
Right.
that we can use. So whether it's using PR to build brands and advertising to maintain them, or the importance and opportunity of being first in a new category. And so we had a book on the origin of brands on that. And then of course, my books such as Visual Hammer, which is talking about using visuals to drive that positioning idea into the mind, which is incredibly important and exciting. And now we get to my latest book, which is The Strategic Enemy,
Yeah.
how it's not just, what to focus on what you stand for, but what are you opposing? What do you stand against? And when you
Yeah.
can make that clear, it makes your positioning actually more easy to understand and to be accepted in the mind by the consumer.
So why is the strategic enemy so critical? Like you argue that being better isn't enough, but why is a strategic enemy so important?
Well, I mean, let's start with, being better. I mean, that's what
Mhm,
most companies are focused on. How can
mhm,
we, communicate that we're better? The problem with being better is that it's not believable. It's what you are saying about yourself. And that, of course, is suspect. So the better strategy is to first define and listen. The key to positioning is having a focus, right?
mhm. Yeah,
Trying
yeah.
to stand for something. And, saying no is incredibly important, right? To
Mhm,
find that focus. But instead of just trying to, say what your focus is, if you can contrast it to an alternative, to something else, to that strategic enemy, whether it's a competitor, another another category, an outdated convention, or a different idea, it's more instantly accepted by the mind and understood by the mind, because the mind can quickly see and understand opposition faster than it can just a superiority claim.
Right. So does the mind? So in your estimation, does the mind work in contrast? Is that what it's looking for? Because if you just come out with the claim, but there's not, you have no frame of reference for it.
Exactly, because you can understand something sometimes more easily by what it's not.
Hmm.
And by standing for something, it makes in standing, rallying people against something is much easier sometimes than getting to go for something. And you have so many brands now that have taken on this cause. Look back in history, and that's where I really got excited about the book, and looking at the examples of companies that had already used this, maybe without calling it a strategic enemy. But Salesforce, I mean, how did they launch? They didn't, today they're a powerhouse, but they didn't necessarily talk about the benefits of why the
No.
cloud was better. They first took down the enemy and they said,
Mhm.
no software, the
Yeah.
end of software.
Yeah.
And that was their big proclamation, if you will, and rallying people to this new generation, this new category of cloud CRM. Or you've
Hmm.
got, my favorite hometown hero here, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
They first in the fried chicken sandwich, they focus only on chicken, unlike most other fast food chains that
Yep.
have hamburgers, and they all added chicken when chicken got hot. But
Hmm.
because Chick-fil-A has a focus, now they can clearly go up against an enemy and make their position more clear, and their, opportunity as being the chicken specialist,
Hmm.
and they're very successful. And we all know the great campaign. They've been using it for 30 years. The cows saying,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Eat
Love
more
those cows.
chicken."
Love
Right?
those cows.
Oh,
Love those billboards when the cows are, the 3D
well,
ones when they're on top.
think
It's
of how
fantastic.
memorable that is, and
Oh,
that's the
absolutely.
challenge. How do we become memorable? How are we not boring? How are we interesting? And unless you have an edge, unless you have a focus, and if you can find then that enemy, that's even makes it more crystal clear what you stand for by rallying people of what you're standing against. Another one is Oatly, right? The oat milk, plant-based milks, a very strong category, but
Hmm.
they've made that enemy, big dairy, and their whole campaign, wow, no cow. So
Hmm.
it's not so much talking about them as it is also, very much proclaiming what that enemy is to rally people to the cause.
Yeah. Well, having grown up in Ireland and stuff, you'll never get me off milk. Sorry.
Well, no, but that is a great point, because when you have an enemy, it's not saying that the enemy is bad or
I know.
wrong necessarily. It's different. Actually, the milk I just read today about, milk coming back with a new Got Milk campaign, and many people are going back to real milk
Hmm.
as being an alternative. And yes, there's people on both sides. There's not one way to do anything. The
Yeah.
problem is companies trying to appeal to everybody.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, because you mentioned focus a couple of times, and I
Yeah,
and I and
my
I'm a
favorite word.
huge believer in focus. Here's the challenge, and you would know this even better than me, is that to focus on something, you have to identify it, you have to choose it, and you have to go all in and say this is it, right?
Sacrifice.
By
Yes.
doing that, you are by definition, you are unchoosing other things, right? You were
Yeah.
saying we're not going to do. People struggle with that. There's always the, yeah, we will focus on this, but there's also that over there that maybe we should focus a little bit on that. And of course there's that bit that maybe. So when you work with clients and people, how do you help them to develop that focus? I find focus is almost the toughest thing to get people to.
It is. I mean, in some ways, I wrote the strategic enemy because that's a clear way to force them to focus, because
Right,
you
right.
can't find the enemy, right?
Hmm.
It is incredibly challenging, and we use one of the most powerful tools we have is using examples and analogies to teach people these principles. And one we use, and the challenge of branding is getting in the mind. And we
Hmm.
like to say, a focus is like a sharp knife, and a sharp knife gets into the mind much faster than a dull one. And so you really have to narrow in on sharpening that focus. And it will require sacrifice, and it will require saying no. But that's then the opportunity to then stand for something and have a very strong message that is simple and clear and can show contrast to something else. And you do have to give up something. I
Yeah.
mean, look, BMW back in the day, they try to promote everything. I mean, a car isn't expensive. They said it
Mhm.
was great in fuel mileage. They said it was good looking. They said it was everything. And they were 17th in sales
Mhm.
in the US imported car market. And then what did they do? Instead of communicating everything, they focused on one idea, the ultimate driving
Driving.
machine. That's all
Mhm.
they talked about, right? They didn't
Mhm.
talk about the fuel. They didn't talk about that. The ultimate driving machine. That was a narrow focus because listen, not everyone wants that, but
Yep.
that's okay. And who was the enemy? Mercedes. And they had one of my favorite ads, the ultimate driving machine versus the ultimate sitting machine.
Yeah.
Listen, it's luxury, it's comfortable, it's a smooth ride. I mean, you go 95 miles an hour, you don't even know if you're on the
Yeah,
road or not. It's
I
so
know.
smooth. And so, again, there is that contrast. You can't be everything. Go in hard on what you can be. Now, here's the thing for a company, they get nervous about this, right? Where we're going to leave something on the table.
This is it. This is the thing that holds them all back because
Oh my gosh, we're going
there's
to
that mythical money on the table over there.
money on the table, money on the table. We can't lose anybody. Oh my gosh. But here's this well, BMW built, they became the leader over Mercedes-Benz
Mm.
by narrowing the focus. That's one. They lost it when they expanded and changed the slogan to joy, but that's another
No, no,
topic.
we've seen a few of those lately.
Disasters, slogan changes. But here, for a big company, here's the opportunity they have. You want narrow brands that, stand and dominate categories. Dominating categories is the goal.
Mhm.
And you then want to launch multiple brands, not one brand on everything. That's not the future. That's not what's working in
Mhm.
today's century. I mean, yeah, last century you had, IBM name on everything. You had GE name on everything. That doesn't work. It didn't work then and it doesn't work now. So the better idea is launching multiple brands. I mean, look back, it's what Toyota did. They
Mhm.
couldn't sell expensive Toyotas.
No, so
They
they got
launched
right. Yeah.
the Lexus. And even Hyundai finally wised up on this. I mean, they finally took the Hyundai name off the Genesis. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nobody wants to spend twice as much and have a
Yeah,
Hyundai label on it. No way. Even in the mind, they know the company makes two brands. It doesn't matter. They buy it despite the fact they know that. And
yeah.
the multiple strategy is something, many companies, often forget about. And tragically, companies like Kodak, disastrously don't think about it. For example, when a brand is so well known and so connected to a category like Kodak and
Mhm.
film photography, the company falls in love with the brand. That's
Yeah.
the problem. They're all Kodak means quality.
Yeah.
Kodak, people love Kodak. People wanna buy anything with Kodak. No, they don't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you mentioned Kodak to younger generations, and then I think you're talking about bears. They think they're thinking Kodiak bears or whatever. Like, huh?
Well, no,
What?
I think there's a pancake mix like that.
Oh, there is there? Yeah. So you tell me a little bit about the two concepts of the indisputable difference and the visual hammer.
Sure. I mean, that was actually the very essence of positioning itself was, my dad ran a very small business to business ad agency in New York City in the 60s. And, he wanted to establish his agency as well as, do better work with his clients. So the initial concept was that every ad should have a rock. And that was the indisputable fact or concept or idea that the consumer wouldn't dispute,
Mhm.
right? So it
Right,
would be
right.
easily accepted. It's all about getting in the mind, and you don't wanna have barriers or people to say, "Whoa," how will it be easily accepted? And so that concept, today is also incredibly important. Like, how can we put it in facts, not just claims, right?
Right.
That, leadership being the ultimate, right? When you're the leader of the category, that's enormously motivating to buy it because
Sure.
people perceive the leader to be better.
Yep. Or
And
safe.
yeah, absolutely. It's the safe choice. People feel it's the better choice.
Mhm.
And so, but how do you get to be the leader? Well, one of the easiest ways is to be first in the category, right? Creating a new category that
Mm.
you can be first in. I mean, what is White Claw? It was the first hard seltzer. I mean, sometimes these categories aren't, mind-blowingly technological. They took
Um,
water and put some alcohol in it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
called it a hard seltzer.
And now
This
that
is a $2
spawned
billion
about
dollar brand. I mean,
yeah, yeah, and
I
that
wish I would have
spawned
thought of that. I mean, duh.
no. No, I mean, I would see no reason for seltzer and alcohol to ever come together, but that's just me. But
Well, we could go to Guinness. I mean,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
have a
No,
very
I'm
strong
okay
brand
with the alcohol part. I'm just saying the rest of it's all getting it. It's funny, like you go into one of the beverage stores now. I'm just mind blown by the varieties and flavors and all of this kind of stuff. That whole alcohol industry has gone nuts.
It has gone nuts, and in some cases, what you see is the disaster of what line extension, what I think
Mhm.
of as really the true enemy of positioning. Because when you put your one brand name on too many products, especially across too many categories, you water down what the brand stands for in the mind, and it becomes
Yeah.
just another name. I mean, look what happened to Bud Light over the
Yeah.
past few years. I mean, first of all, they had it was Bud and Budweiser and Bud Light, okay,
Mhm.
but then they had Bud Light Lime, Bud Light
Yeah.
Seltzer,
Yeah.
Bud Light Hard Soda, Bud Light, Bud Light Arita. I mean, disastrous line extension that undermined the power, of being connected with the king of beer idea. And
Mhm.
here's the thing, all those line extensions are basically losers because if you
Yeah.
want a hard seltzer, you want a White Claw. You
Yeah.
want a spirit seltzer, you want a High Noon. You want the leader in that category, is the most strong position because here's the thing. Consumers don't care about brands, they care about categories. Now they talk in
Mm.
brands, right? You say, "I want a High Noon or a White Claw," but you
Mhm.
think category.
Right.
You
Yeah.
first look
Yeah.
in the mind of, what brand names do I associate in the, hard seltzer category in my mind, and you pick the brand based on that category. You don't think, I want a Bud Light today. Do I want a Bud Light Zero with no alcohol, or do I want a seltzer, or do I want a
Yeah.
beer? Nobody thinks like that. That's
No, no.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and we're seeing no, I see that all the time now is, what you call them, brand extensions, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, 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 they
It's
don't
a disaster. Well, it's big company thinking. I mean,
yeah,
I think they fall in love with their brand name, and sometimes they see the rise of competitors. Strong entrepreneurs coming
mhm,
in with brands like Red Bull or White Claw, and they try to cover it with a line extension, but it's never effective against a strong, focused
yeah,
competitor. The better
exactly.
strategy is to watch as those things are on the rise, and come out with your own brand first, with a better name and a better strategy, or, of course, you could buy them. I mean, Coca-Cola for years tried to get into the energy drink market. They had
Mhm.
Tab Energy, they had Full Throttle, all losers. They finally just invested in Monster, and that was
Yeah,
probably the best thing they could have done.
they
Um,
could have, that's my brand. That's my
Monster?
it's Monster, unfortunately,
Oh,
for
it's
many
great.
since its inception.
Oh, I love that brand
Yeah,
because
so do I.
Well, listen, Red Bull pioneered the category, right?
Mhm,
Great strategy,
yep,
took the product from Thailand, gave it a great
mhm,
name, great visual, great package that was small. It said it was
mhm,
strong. But here's the thing. Everyone went in, saw the success, jumped in with copycat, Me Too, line extensions or new brands that just
yeah,
looked like Red Bull and weren't special, and they especially weren't different, except for Monster.
yep,
What did Monster do? 16-ounce can. Is that
mhm,
better? Who knows? I
yeah,
mean, it was
um
different,
better
and that
taste
difference
too.
yeah,
To
yes,
be honest,
that's
to be
right.
honest, let's face it, Red Bull never tasted very good.
Oh, no, it tastes terrible. I'm not sure Monster tastes that good either,
No,
but
the Monster definitely tastes better, and it's got some good flavors. But just switching gears for a moment,
yeah.
just on one other example, Liquid Death, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so
Everyone loves to talk about Liquid Death.
yeah, because I think it's fascinating. Because talk about going into a saturated market,
Oh my gosh.
water.
It's not different, it's water.
It's water. So talk to me a little bit about how they were able to do it, because I'm still to this day still kind of blown away when I walk through the supermarket and I see Liquid Death cans and
Mhm.
people buying them, and I still can't wrap my head around it.
Oh, it's such an interesting example because, they really they use these principles and did it in such a brilliant way. And I mean, even, surprised myself in terms of actually back in my agency day, our client was Evian. And as a
Mhm.
junior executive, my
Yeah.
job was to go to the bodega and buy every competitive water brand for the meeting. And there
Mhm.
was like 40 of them. I mean, it was
Right.
insane. I was like, how could anyone think of a new idea in water? It's all been done. And there's powerful brands like Evian and Fiji and, Poland Spring. But what they did was different, and they went after the packaging itself. And plastic bottles are an environmental hazard,
Mhm.
and what, they're not being recycled, they're killing the landfills, and they're just so convenient. We're so hooked on them. And they said, well, what about aluminum cans? These are infinitely recyclable. They're way better for the environment. And they also tapped into the idea of people wanting to go to concerts, wanting to be at social gatherings where other people were drinking alcohol,
Mhm.
and people didn't want to drink alcohol. The young kids are not into this at concerts, apparently, but they didn't want to hold a plastic water bottle. They wanted some, cool branding with a healthy product that was also environmentally impactful. And that was the message of combining all of those things together, giving it a strong name that also had a very strong strategic enemy: death to plastics. I
Yeah.
mean, the powerful idea, without that as the backing, I think, of the brand, it would not as be successful. Liquid death in plastic bottles, I don't think would work. It
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
much more effective because they have that, that credibility and real, emotional idea behind it.
And obviously timing helps too, because
Sure.
if you think about it over the last like number of years, like metal water bottles, that people buy, reusable ones, and
Yes.
like people have kind of gotten used to a slightly metallic taste, right? So when Liquid Death came out in an aluminum can, it's got a slightly metallic taste, but people were used to it because of their personal water bottles.
Yeah, well, they sure, I think so, but those personal water bottles, I mean, trying to wash those, it is
Yeah, yeah.
impossible. I mean, I try to be good for the environment, but there's something about the single use, and
Yeah.
that's where I think the aluminum. But, I mean, let's not forget the importance, and really their narrow focus in building that brand was not in the supermarket.
Mhm.
We see it now, but it was at concerts and events. I mean, those were cans that people wanted to be photographed with. They wanted, they were proud to be drinking and living a sober lifestyle. I mean, Soberoo at Bonnaroo. I
Mhm.
mean, this is also, to your point, the timing was right for that.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, everyone was drinking at concerts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
There was no water.
no, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, timing is everything. But like you said, I mean, there's a fantastic example of a company going into an absolutely what would appear on the outside as a saturated market, but actually managing to go in and create a whole niche for themselves.
Well, the other one that's a very good example is Dude Wipes.
Dude, wipes, I know.
Come on, dude. I mean, every time I say it, people giggle. It's fantastic. But
Yeah.
this also, this product had been around. The
Hmm.
main players like the Charmin and Cottonelles
Yeah.
had, they had launched this over 10 years prior, but they positioned it horribly. It was like moist toilet paper. It was an add-on.
Yeah.
They couldn't make themselves the enemy and
Hmm.
say toilet paper sucks, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
it never had a clear message. It was, feminine orient. I mean, it was just horrible.
Hmm.
And so here's a guy out of college that is, with his friends and eating a lot of, as he says, eating a lot of burritos, drinking a lot of beer. And they were using baby wipes to, clean up.
Hmm.
And he said, why isn't there a product that appeals to me, that gets the job done with, great packaging and branding and all these things together? And, it was a little bit of a Liquid Death move. In fact,
Yeah.
he thinks Liquid Death copied him, but but it was a great strategy because then he could strongly go out against and say, toilet paper sucks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And dudes need this. And listen, the ladies need it too.
Mhm. No, it's fantastic, absolutely. And so, I mean, everybody knows it, even though there's competitors have come out since, obviously trying to get in on that market. I think everybody knows Dude Wipes.
Well, it's a great name. I mean,
Mhm.
it is great, and it has become synonymous. When you're the leader, that
Mhm.
brand name can become synonymous with the category, and
Right.
everything else is an imitation, right?
Mhm.
Everything else is not the real thing, and, God forbid you don't bring home the real thing. If my husband ever came home without Bounty paper towels, there would be, trouble, and
Oh yeah,
vice versa.
yeah,
He's
tell
addicted.
tell your husband I sympathize with him, because my wife is a bit of a paper towel aficionado, or
Oh, I
so.
love a good paper towel, let
Oh,
me
yeah,
tell
no,
you.
I have got into trouble many times for bringing home the cheap version, and she's
Oh,
going, "Oh,
there
it's useless, it doesn't work, it's blah, blah,
That's
blah."
but but you know what the Bounty did? When, the recession came and things get trouble, they came out with cheaper Bounty called Bounty Basic, Can you
Oh,
imagine? I
right.
mean, what does that do to the brand and the mind? I mean, first of all, it makes your regular product seem too expensive,
Yep.
and no way Bounty Basic is gonna get it done, right?
No, no, and if you're gonna buy Bounty Basic, why wouldn't you just buy the cheaper generic?
Yeah, I mean, well, the power in Bounty and, the quicker
Mhm.
picker upper,
Yeah,
they've got a great slogan, is you don't use as much. You don't need to. It's
yeah.
so darn powerful. I think there's value in saying, cheap paper towels are a horrible thing to do. That's the enemy. But if you come out with Bounty Basic, how can you say that's the enemy?
Yeah,
That's where
that's
companies get in trouble. And that line extension robs you the opportunity to find that strategic enemy.
yeah, or as you said, I mean, you actually introduced the strategic enemy within your own organization,
Yeah, I like to say you become your own worst enemy.
there you
Um,
go, you don't
yeah,
work.
you can give birth to your own enemy. That's okay. Mike's Hard Lemonade was the one that launched, the White Claw, as a
Mhm,
matter of fact, because, that was a great success in the early 2000s, but then we all realized how much sugar and carbs and calories were in those
mhm,
suckers.
yep,
And, instead of just line extending that, launching a new brand in a new category with fewer calories, no carbs, all these things, that people were looking for was a much more powerful direction.
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, listen, Laura, this has been fascinating. I mean, we could go on, clearly,
Oh,
yeah, we're a
sure.
long time. All of Laura's information will be below this video, but before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yes, well, I am a positioning expert. I consult with companies around the world on helping them with their positioning strategy, with their visual hammers, with their strategic enemies. And I, write many, many books, including the latest, The Strategic Enemy, and give speeches. It is just my joy to continue the work of positioning started by my wonderful father.
Yeah, thank you. That's very inspiring. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.